Welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we're actually taking a look at ATV Mania that was released for the PlayStation by Gotham Games back in 2003. And this isn't your average kind of off-road type of racer. It has a lot of unique quirks that you would see with other kind of combat based racing games. If you've ever played the Wipeout series or other type of games of its kind, where you can race, but you also have combat abilities where you can utilize weapons to gain an advantage throughout your races. This is actually quite a fun little take on a unique type of game, as there is a lot of off-road racers, but to actually have like a quad bike racer with weapons, something a little bit different. Again, it does take its ideas from a lot of other games, like I mentioned, but it puts it into its own kind of style and genre, which is quite fun actually. So I never actually played this game. I do remember it actually being released in the latter end towards the end of the PlayStation's life cycle, because at this stage now, around when this game was released, I had bought myself a PlayStation 2 and I was actually playing that a lot more. So I didn't buy PlayStation 1 games as regularly at that time. It took a few years and then eventually revisited the PlayStation 1 and I bought a few games, but again, this one here now, I'd only seen in shops and stuff, but I never actually bought it or let alone played it. Because at that time I didn't really know what it was kind of about. I just remember seeing like the cases and the covers and I just assumed that it was just another off-road racer, which I actually enjoyed. Off-road racing type of games, some of them were actually quite fun, if a little tricky to master and handle, but they're actually good fun, and the graphics do be fairly decent on some of them as well. So when I actually got the chance to play this, I says, right, I'll give it a go and see how I get on. And it is actually a fun game. I will admit, it is a bit simplistic in terms of its nature, like I mentioned. The tracks are fairly linear in terms of the restrictions. There's not really too much in the difference, like in terms of the track layouts and being able to move outside the boundaries. You can't really do that. And again, it's kind of got the same kind of premises a lot of those other combat games where you're racing around trying to win against other opponents, but you're also collecting collectibles throughout the races as well to try and actually gain an advantage. Now I will admit, playing this here type of game, it took a few tries to really kind of get to grips with it as well, because it is fast, but it's also a little bit on the fiddly side, I will admit, when I was playing it, to get used to the controls and so forth, and even just the combat system as well. It can be a bit of a tough game to master, but as you can see here, because I'm so far behind, if you let your opponents get too far away, I've noticed that with this game the chances of you actually catching them towards the end of the race is virtually impossible. You'll never do it. So again, you'll probably have to like restart the race. So if you can keep up to speed with everybody, then you're not too bad. But again, it's actually quite fun, but it's great for a quick like casual playthrough. You actually have access now to different modes, like say you've 1 player or 2 player games, you can play a multiplayer on it, and you have like time attack, single race, you have championships, so you can go in and unlock other vehicles, characters, or unlock upgrades and more weapons for your vehicles and so forth. And you have different types of quad bikes, as you can see here, so they've all got their own unique characteristics and so forth, and then obviously handling preferences and statistics and so forth as well, so it does add a little bit more challenge to your playthroughs. As you can see here are the weapons that I'm using, so once you keep up with the pack you can utilise the weapons and at least you can hit people with them. But again, some weapons are more effective than others in terms of doing damage and so forth. So usually what happens is when you actually are taken out of the equation, you'll just respawn a couple of seconds later and then you can continue on the race, but again with some sort of penalty, so you'll be a few seconds behind. So you'll gradually have to go through the process of trying to regain your place and so forth. But again, with these type of races, that's usually the way it goes anyway, so it's a fun little game actually to play casually. It takes a bit of getting used to, I will admit, even though the tracks aren't overly long and they're not how would you put it? They are quite restrictive because they are quite linear. But it's a simple and effective pick up and play game. If you're looking for something really casual and just something just to pass the time, say for a couple of minutes or like a half an hour or so, it's definitely a fun little game to play for a little while. And the fact is that it actually utilises the combat mechanics as well, so it is, like I said, a fun type of idea to actually have that game mechanic but with off-road racing, or like with quad bikes, which is something that you would never really have seen before, so it is pretty cool. It is a pretty good idea. And again, that's kind of the concept of the likes of the PlayStation back in those days. It was like an early adaptive process, like for developers, because they were experimenting with different things. They were taking things that actually worked from other games and trying to implement them into their own. In some cases it may not have worked as well as others, but that's just the luck of the draw basically when you're trying these things out. But it's not to say that they're bad. At least you know that they work, and they all, like every game that's on the PlayStation and any console in general, they all offer their own unique kind of presence and feel, and it all depends on the player as an if they want to actually play it and if they find any value in it. It's totally up to the individual themselves. No, but after having played in this game now, and I only played it for a little while, I just played a couple of races, because again, this was a game that I never really experienced back in the day, so I'm literally just trying to go through the process of trying to experience as much of these games as I actually possibly can. And as I'm going through it, I'm finding a lot more games that are actually quite playable. Some of them are actually fantastic. There is a lot of hidden gems on the platform. So this one here now was actually a fun little game and I to play for a little while. But again, after a few races, you'd probably find it's probably a little bit on the repetitive side, because it can be a little bit on the difficult side as well. But it is what it is, you know. It's simplistic in its nature, and it offers up a good bit of fun. And if you're into off-road racing and you like combat racing, this would be a good fix to actually have, that you can kind of tie the two in together. So it's definitely one to look out for if you want to try it out. I highly recommend that you actually give it a go. If you just want something just to try that's a little bit different, I highly recommend you look into it and see what you think. So what are your experiences of ATV Mania? Have you actually played it? And what are your thoughts of the game? Make sure to let me know down in the comments below. So also, if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Also hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be updated whenever I release a new video, as I will be releasing more videos regarding games I find on the PlayStation and just sharing my memories and so forth. And as always, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and make sure to keep those gaming memories alive.